obvious one. So I
Yeah.
always wonder, like, would that work?
Good
Good
night.
morning, everybody. Welcome. We always have so much fun behind the seenes. I wish everybody could join us just before the show because we always end up laughing about
We
something.
need to record behind the scenes and then put out like a reel, like a behind the scenes reel or something like that.
Oh, that's a great idea. Okay, so if you are here, welcome to Power Hour. And if you want to see a behind the scenes reel, put hashtag reel in the comments and we will make this happen for you. But if you're just joining us this morning, thank you so much for being here. We are really excited to have you here for another edition of Power Hour. And today is one of my favorite topics. And I promise I did not pay, or I might have bribed a little bit, the crew to let me talk about resumes here for the next 20-30 minutes. I am so excited to jump into this topic, but we're just glad that you're here with us, and let us know where you're tuning in from. Right now, we're streaming live to LinkedIn, to YouTube, and to Facebook too. So let us know where you're coming from. And as always, what part of the country or what part of the world you're joining us from. We always love to know where people are tuning in from. So Erin, what's going on down there in Texas? Anything exciting in your world?
Well, we had a big storm last night. That's something. Ooh. So, like there was a few claps of thunder where like I said like, oh my God. Like I was like, it just totally scared me because it would be like totally silent in my house and like little rumbles of thunder. Then all of a sudden this huge clap and I'm like, oh my God. But so this morning, like there's lights out, there's flash flooding, like it's like kind of insane over here in Austin. But
are you guys safe where you are?
Yeah, we're all good. Like we're in the hill country, so there's tons of hills, and and our house is kind of up on a hill, and so knock on wood, we don't get the flooding, but there's a lot of low-lying areas as well. And so I was at the gym this morning, and on the news it was saying like flash floods because of the thunderstorms, and so there's all these advisories in place and stuff. But I don't think we're supposed to get more rain today. I hope not, because they said some places got up to 8 inches last night. So
oh wow,
yeah, which is kind of crazy for us. So yeah, but other than that, I'm doing good. And I see that Dan is here with us in spirit in the comments. He popped on behind the scenes with this cute little baby who's not feeling too well this morning. So Dan is hanging out with his little squishy this morning. And I was like, I just wanted to take her like through, like, how like you wish you had smell-o-vision if someone's like cooking something yummy. I'm like, I want to like grab his baby.
We just pass the baby around.
Just pass the baby. It's fine.
The first time and distance traveling baby at the same time.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing. It's like the real Back to Future moment. Well, we're so excited for you. I'm glad everything's okay over there, and that hopefully there's no more rain for today to let it calm down out there in Texas. Yeah. And I'm so glad to see we've got Christine here from New York. Good morning. Always wonderful to see you. And Steve, great to see you too. And Dan, thank you so much for chatting it up for us in the comments. If you take some time away to just go rest and hang out with your baby, we totally get that too. But thanks for joining us in spirit. So today we get to talk about something that I think many people have strong feelings about. And that is, hey, I have done my time in corporate America, and I've worked past the baby, Dan. That's exactly. And I've done my time in corporate America. I've got my idea and my passion down, and I'm really excited to start my own business. Boom! I'm an entrepreneur. I'm going to do this thing. Now I get to leave some things behind, right? Erin, this week you talked about that stuffy suit can go by the wayside. The water cooler moments that can be a little awkward. Someone stealing your, reheated salmon sandwich from the break room, and also your resume. And let me tell you how many people I've worked with who are in the entrepreneurial space who really need a resume, but they did not think about it that way, because you kind of feel like you're released from that. Like you don't have the corporate flag anymore, waving, and you don't have the sales numbers coming to you, for example, if you're in sales, routinely. And so a resume is like the last thing on your mind, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
because people I do. That's what I thought. I was like, well, if you're an entrepreneur, like, why would you still need a resume? Because the traditional thought, I think, behind a resume is that it's to get you hired for your next gig, right? You want to put everything on there to impress the next employer. And if you're an entrepreneur and that's not your next step, like I'm not going back to working for somebody, then why would you need it? So I think that's probably the mindset that most people have.
I think you're right. And then, you get to finally be your own boss. And so not having to necessarily prove yourself can be a little bit of a sneaky trap, because when we stop doing that, we stop being able to convey our value in a very succinct and powerful way. So today I am here to convince you that, if you're an entrepreneur, you still do really need that resume. And I'm going to give you 3 major reasons why, because, many times we just kick it to the wayside. But when we have that message, when we have that together, it can be really, really powerful. So Steve Sellen is on Babysitting Dudes, so I figured I'd join you in the comments. Awesome. So yes, we love those salmon sandwiches as well. And my first thing I want to share with you guys is, let me see if I can share this window with you. Oh, you're going to love this. Okay, here we go. We've got, boom, number 1. The first thing that you've got to know, if you have not put together your resume yet and you're an entrepreneur, and look at this little sparkle here, is that
or fancy.
If you want to make more sales, you have got to chunk down your message to the finer points of what you're doing and what you can actually offer to people. So a lot of times what will happen is I'll have a client come to me and they're an entrepreneur and they don't have this together yet. And they say, okay, well, I said, well, tell me about your accomplishments. Tell me what you would share with your clients. Like, why do they want to work with you? And they sort of sit back and they think, well, I have this laundry list of, tasks and offerings that I can give, but I don't have those quantified yet. And so why this becomes so important is because when you're able to put that document together, then you can take what makes you really valuable, right? You can identify what value you bring to your client and quantify that. And then you have it ready to go for the next person, your next sales call. What's really neat about this too is that, if you've been in business for yourself long enough, likely you're generating all kinds of numbers that you might not even be thinking about, right? So for example, if you're in content marketing, you could be measuring things like audience growth, your own sales numbers. You could be talking about you could add your social proof to your resume and some testimonials. You can add your client wins. And so then all of a sudden the conversation becomes like, yes, I can get you more results and I'll figure out how to tell you why, to let me pull out my document. I can literally read from it and support myself with my next client. Mm-hmm. So it's really nice one for the organizational bit of that, because then you have to put all of these metrics together in one place to help yourself throughout, grabbing new clients and really showing them how you move the needle for them.
Yeah. And I think that's such a good point, because I think most entrepreneurs are trying to get some sort of like credibility, testimonials, some sort of facts and figures to be like, hey, I have this credibility, I have this experience, I've gotten these results for these people. And, you want to show that, be it on your website, your sales page, what have you. And to your point, Claire, your resume is a huge part of that. Like, you could just point to your resume. And if you're just starting out and maybe you don't have those testimonials that are like, oh, so-and-so got me these specific results, you can point to your resume and be like, yes, here, this is what I've done, in my career. This is what I've done in my business. And it doesn't necessarily rely on getting a third party to vouch for you.
It's so true. And, sometimes people think, especially if you're early, and anybody here who's, let us know how long you've been in business. Put it in the chat, but if you're within your first 5 years, Erin, you're so right. Sometimes you don't, many of us don't start out with great testimonials, right? We don't start out with impressive numbers, but just the idea of the fact that you really need to get this stuff on paper to support your business is kind of the kicker. It's kind of the motivator to say, okay, go out and get these results. Go out and ask for testimonials. I remember working with back when a lifetime ago, I worked with a painting group, and the owner of the painting company was incredible. Her clients loved her, but she was so incredibly busy with work that actually putting together testimonials and case studies or anything like that to work on the business always kind of fell to the back burner because she was busy making it rain, right? So that's number one. If you want to make more sales and be able to justify why you are so great, it's a really important thing to get those things together. And then once you have that down on paper, those little bits of information that talk about how you move the needle, what kind of results you get for a client, you can use all of that information on your sales page, in your marketing messaging, in your email campaigning, and everything else. So it's kind of like the launching pad. We'll call the resume the launching pad or the sales page when it comes to entrepreneurs. Okay, so the next one, I think that, I don't know if I want to share it. I'm going to share it. Okay, the next one. Okay, so the next one is inspired by a recent client of mine. And if I can advance the slide here. Okay, the next reason that you must have a resume as an entrepreneur is for surprise opportunities. Okay, now when you're an entrepreneur, there is always that axe hanging above us, right? Like we're nervous, like it falls to us, everything, the marketing, the actual doing the business, the networking, and everything else. All of it falls to us. And that can make us not, it's important to be able to manage all of those things and then quantify them. And then once you start doing and once you start building that business, if you're doing it well, people take notice, right? Then you've got, maybe the LinkedIn Creator Program is reaching out like, hey, do you want to be part of this thing? Or, strategic partnerships come your way. Or maybe in your desired industry, some companies would approach you to consult for them. And so whether you're going to keep going it on, alone, you're going to enter into some of these strategic partnerships, or you are thinking about maybe doing a hybrid thing, where you consult for a company or you work for a company and for yourself. All of those things can come out of absolute, the blue. And so why I mention that is many times I get this call that's like, Claire, I need to go and, I really want to go consult for this company. It's like a dream opportunity for me. I've got my own business going on, but I don't have a resume and they need me to send them one. And so being prepared before you're ready becomes really important. And that way that, when those opportunities come along, you can grab them, you can be ready, or you just need a couple minor tweaks and then you can get going. So
yeah,
that's one of my favorites.
So Claire worked on my resume and it takes time, you guys. So like, I was so glad to have her help because oh my God, she probably laughed my resume out of the building. Because when I like, it was like so old school, you guys, like I didn't realize how far resumes had come. And mine was like this, like just the old school Word doc. And it was like, you bold the title of the company and you italicize how long you've been there. And then you like list out every single thing that you've ever done. And so it was so old school. And I was just like, oh gosh, this needs a refresh. And I'm like, I want to put my resume on my website because it's so beautiful. And I'm just like, I've never seen resumes. Like there's testimony quotes in there and testimony, all this stuff. And it's beautiful. But it takes time. And so, especially when you have these opportunities that come around that you weren't expecting, you want to, like Claire said, you want to be on your A game. You want to be ready, and you don't have time at that point to be like, oh, okay, well, now I need to stop all the other million things that I'm responsible for and change my focus onto my resume, which I have not seen in 8 years. And it doesn't have the last, 8 years stuff on it. And I don't know how far resumes have come and what's expected format wise. And all of a sudden you're stuck, And so to Claire's point, to have it already ready and then it makes it shines a great light on you, to where it's just like, well, you're just prepared, for everything. Oh, you need this? Sure, here you go. Instead of the scramble, which is what we all want to avoid.
Totally. Josh in the chat just mentioned, it's all about the resume approach is all about alignment, and how your values align with what value you can bring your customer. And that's such an incredible point, Josh, because I'm going to give you guys a pro tip here. When it comes to writing a resume, whether you are in business for yourself or you're working for somebody else, one really important thing to do right at the front is to have a base document and then the one that you're sending out to people. But the base document is where, like you said, Erin, you're so busy working on the business and doing the things, right? And really making the plays. But if you can get some of those things into that base document, doesn't matter how long it is or how beautiful it is, but if you can get the accomplishments in one place, then you can use them, right? Then when, like Josh is saying, you find that alignment with a customer who's in a specific category or is interested in a specific result, you can pull from that base document and plop it into that sales page, right? For that client, right? Or for that company you want to consult for. And that way you can always make sure that, you've got your accomplishments cached, because you don't ever want to have a resume and like delete things that you aren't using currently and then try to remember them later if you have to change your document. That's a nightmare. Those are the calls I get at midnight and they're like, Claire, I've literally pulled every last piece of my hair out because I forget what happened 5 years ago, because we're busy people, we're doing the things. So Josh, I'm so glad you brought that up. And Erin, you're right. I mean, when you're busy working in the business and doing things and doing moves in the business, it's hard to remember or to slow down and to take that time, So the story I wanted to share with you too, you guys, is that I just had a client call me the other day, and these are the surprise opportunities that I'm talking about. So she calls me and she's like, oh my gosh, she's a social media coach, and she is doing well in her business as an entrepreneur. She's doing really well. Her audience loves her. She's doing incredible things. And she calls me and she's like, Claire, you won't believe this, but a Tony Robbins level group called me, and they need somebody to they want to take somebody on as talent, and they're interested in me, but they need my resume. And my resume is still talking about my corporate job 15 years ago, right? And so it's those kind of things that they're like, okay, can you send us your resume in 48 hours? And you're like, it's not here. It doesn't exist yet. So anyway, those are the calls I love to get, because I love to see people grabbing opportunities. So, when you're ready with that stuff, then you can grab onto those surprises that come your way. So that was a pretty cool one. Okay. And number 3, this is something that I think most people don't consider when it comes to their resume. And I highly, highly recommend it, because one concept we hear more than any other on this platform, other than support, LinkedIn is so supportive. So I'm referencing LinkedIn here, but, supporting each other, keep going in business, serve your audience. Those are all big key themes. But one theme that comes quite frequently is burnout, right? Entrepreneurs are notorious for being big-hearted and serving, right? And being super passionate about what they're doing. And whether they're in business for themselves or they're working for somebody else in addition to working for themselves, that's incredibly taxing. And so sometimes burnout happens, and what you need to do is be able to rejuvenate yourself, right? You've got to be able to fill your cup so you can continue to serve at the capacity that you want to. So here's where I use a resume to fuel this as well. So I encourage everybody to start jotting down those accomplishments that you have, and start keeping those thank you notes that you get, right? And start adding the testimonials that you have to your resume or to your sales document, because on those days that, entrepreneurship gets really hard, it's really helpful to be able to go back to those things and remember what people appreciate you for. Remember what you do well, and what people see you doing that makes you feel good and helps you to keep going forward. I think burnout's a huge problem that many of us face. And of course, right, because there's one of us, and a lot of times, if you're within your first couple years of entrepreneurship, you're doing everything, soup to nuts. It's you. Someone asked me the other day, they're like, okay, so who on your team do I work with to get this interview ready for the resume? And I'm like, you're looking at her. And she goes, okay, so who actually writes the resume? I said, right here. Okay, so
still
who
me.
can help me? Exactly. And who can help me with my LinkedIn posting strategy? Again, hold on, let me get her. Here I am. So, when it gets hard in the natural roller coaster that business ownership is, if you're able to rejuvenate yourself, and remind yourself with thank you notes or the accomplishments that you have on how you do matter and you make a difference, and your efforts are needed and appreciated, it's a huge help. It's a huge help. Yeah.
Yeah, I was really impressed when you did mine, and like you added, those quotes and the testimonials and stuff, and like you pulled stuff out to highlight and everything. And I was just like, wow, what a cool way, to showcase somebody's experience and expertise, so it's not your grandpa's resume anymore. It's more well-rounded and holistic, really, because it takes a view of everything. And I'm curious, Claire, too, do you think that because like our world is changed, is mostly driven by the pandemic, to where a lot of us are working from home, entrepreneurs may work from home anyway, some of them may have offices, who knows, but their personal lives and our professional lives are blending more now than ever. And so I'm curious, like, do you see the future of the resume, or maybe it's already happening, kind of bringing that in of like personal stuff and, I don't know, hobbies or kids, or and I know it gets tricky with kids because you don't want to like, you can't ask if someone's a parent, whatever, in interviews and stuff like that. But for select personal stuff, are you bringing that into the resumes, or what do you think about that? I'm just curious.
I think that's a really great point. And, it's funny you mentioned that. I was just reading something from Niraj this morning, who posted that very same thing. And you're right. Now the business and personal life is, inextricably combined, right? It's the same coin, but two sides. And so when it comes to presenting yourself and your professional brand, I think it does become important. Now, I don't know if I'd go so far as adding kids or, pets and hobbies on a resume. It kind of depends what industry you're in as well. But I think that those things can and should be added in other areas that are personal sales pages, right? Like on our LinkedIn. You could talk about, give a little more personality, a little more grit to places like LinkedIn, which is, in a sense, where you should also have a lot of that resume content, that sales page content, and your website, where people are going to go to get to know you. Now, I'll tell you that 99% of my clients come to me and they have almost the exact first line. It's like we all took the same resume course back in 2005, right? And it's, I'm a such and such, I have 15 years of experience in the such and such industry doing XYZ, right? And so when we can take that and say, okay, that is true. But if somebody's trying to get to know me, I'm going to bring in some of these other personality pieces, like you mentioned, so that they can, really get a feel for who I am in the sea of candidates saying the same thing. Yeah. So I think that there's room for that. No, yeah. I think there's room for that.
No. Okay, great. Because I was reading some articles recently, and they were saying that employers or people you're going to partner with, their thought is that it's easier to train people on the hard skills, technical, that sort of thing. But what they're really looking for is the soft skills, the culture fit, the personalities, because that you can't teach, right? I mean, a person is a person, and that's their personality, and whatever. And so, so to get that across in the materials that you're submitting to them, I think could be beneficial.
I think you're right. Yeah, absolutely. I think culture fit environments become huge. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's a new. It's not new, but now companies are focused more on that than ever, which is wonderful. So that's not something that can be encapsulated in just a sales number, right?
Right.
Maybe a retention number. But I think that all those things really are important, and they do come into play for like the bigger picture, the bigger picture. And especially if you're an entrepreneur. So all of those, watching today here, if you are in business for yourself, you have likely had to have the branding conversation with yourself, right? You've had to identify how you want to present your brand to the world and what that looks and feels and sounds like. And that's what needs to be on your entrepreneur resume. That feeling, that look, that sound, that's what has to be resonating with your audience over there on your resume. And I see Kathy asked a great question, Kathy. She says, if you have multiple professions, job and entrepreneur, would you include both on the resume or only what you want to promote? Such a good question. I get this one all the time. And it depends. So it depends on what you're going for next. There is a common worry by companies that, okay, if you're going to come and work for us, but you have this side gig going on, will you be able to handle both effectively? So here's how I recommend that you do this. I would include both. Because the one thing you don't want to happen is to walk into that interview and you have this bustling side hustle going on in addition to what you're doing now. And they say, oh, well, that's not on your resume, but you have this side hustle, right? You always want to kind of get rid of the questions up front. Like the worries need to go away with the information that you're providing. So Kathy, here's what I would do. I would address both. I would add both to your resume. You want to tailor the language still to how you deliver value to that company in that specific industry, and figure out a way that you can talk about what you provide in your side hustle that will be valuable to them. More than ever, companies are looking for brand voices, brand advocates. In fact, I was just looking yesterday, and there are whole sites where they're recruiting influencers, right? Entrepreneurs and influencers, so that they can have people who already have built a trusted audience and bring them into their company, and then parlay their relationships and their, social media savvy and marketing messaging to the company's efforts to support the whole. So I think that when you can transition your message to, this side hustle is separate completely from what I do at work, and you can kind of marry the two, at least in how you provide value, then your resume becomes really powerful and your side hustle becomes interesting to your employer and your hiring manager, not a detractor. So have you found that too, Erin? I mean, I know you do both. You're working and you're also running your own business.
Yeah, I do both. And so I don't think it's talked about often enough, because I think there's a huge percentage of the population that's doing both, working full-time for an employer, but also having like this a bustling company of their own. And I think that's becoming more the norm than the exception, right? And I think more employers are like, as you said, more comfortable with that and actually seeking that out, because my gosh, if someone is that tenacious and ambitious that they're running their own thing, then think about the dedication and the work ethic that they would bring to the table for that employer, right? And so we did that with mine. We have Muscle Creative on my resume, it's my, and we could bring in, and my podcast is mentioned, and so I think all of those things to the right employer, that's actually a plus. And if it's not, then that's not the employer for you, because most likely, if you are doing your own thing and working for an employer, that's you, that's your personality. You like a lot of things going on, you need all these different challenges. And then if an employer doesn't see that as a benefit, then you're probably not going to be happy with that employer, because they're probably going to pigeonhole you and be like, okay, this is your little box. This is what you're responsible for. And that's not going to be good enough for you. And so you want the employer who's going to respect that and be like, oh my gosh, look at this person, like all they're doing. We love that. And we want more of that, you know. By the way, Claire, I found my little clear glasses. So.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Blue blockers at the ready, everybody.
Thought I'd point that out. It's ladies' hour, and we broke out our blue blocker clear glasses.
Do we always match? 100%. Yes. Okay, so I had to laugh because earlier this week Dan was saying, change my mind on this resume thing, Erin. And he just dropped the best comment. Okay, he said, when I was getting started, I created a rainy day doc where I saved all the little notes of thanks from people that I'd go to when I was feeling down. Exactly. This resume document really, when it comes to entrepreneurs, needs to just be called something different, right? It needs to be called your sales page, your support document, your data center document, whatever you want to call it, because it can support us in so many ways. So Dan, thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you guys for asking such great questions. I mean, I have to admit, it's a real pleasure talking about resumes. You know, I could talk about this stuff all day long. So I appreciate everybody being here. And if you need help for that matter too, if you're like, okay, Claire, I get it. I haven't really nailed my numbers down yet. I'm not really sure what my positioning statement is. And I certainly don't have it on paper yet. Just shoot me a DM. I'd be happy to help you and point you in the right direction. So it's just, I appreciate you guys letting me talk about my first love, career advancement.
No, it was great. When you came up with this topic, I was like, I am so interested in this, but I never really thought about it. So I'm so glad that we took the time. And thanks to everybody for showing up. And the questions that came in were spot on. And I think were things that everybody was thinking about and not asking. So really appreciate it. And so Claire, tell us like where people can find you and where they can get some like, some freebies, some help, because I'm sure some people are like, oh my God, help me. I don't know what to do.
Oh yeah. In fact, I thank you for asking. I just released my first template you can buy ever. I've never released a template before. This is the first time. It's geared towards sales. So if you want to sell, your business, or you want to get into a traditional sales role, this is the one. Anyway, just DM me if you'd like over on LinkedIn. If you want to grab that for yourself, happy to send it your way, send you the link. And otherwise, I've got everything else I offer over on tractionresume.com. So feel free to check that out as well. And then me over on LinkedIn if we're not yet connected. I know many folks in the chat today, Brian, we need to connect. I see right now we're still second to connection. So we need to make sure we fix that too. But go find me over there, and I'm always open to questions. I love helping you guys with whatever you need with your career advancement. So please feel free to get in touch. I just read a study that 55% of people start a business in their life. Right. So this is top of mind for more than half of us in America. And so doing it well and showing up strong and representing your brand well with resume and sales documents becomes really important. So happy to help get you where you need to go.
Yay. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. And maybe use the next few minutes to a half an hour to work on it and go to Traction Resume and get some tips.
Yes, totally. Do it. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another Power Hour Ladies Edition with Erin and I. And we will see you next week for another awesome Power Hour, always Thursday mornings at 7 a.m. Thanks so much. Have a great week.
Bye, guys.